It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am the 2018 Innovation Award winner by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And thank you to gentlemen like these who have helped me get to where I am with them, and more stuff going on with them in the near future. But it's not about me. It's about great gentlemen like these two on the broadcast tonight. And we're broadcasting live on the Get Vocal platform, also on YouTube Live and Periscope. So the most challenging job I'm going to have tonight is monitoring everything. So if I put my head down, it's monitoring and doing all this stuff. These gentlemen are the stars of the show. First off, I will introduce Kente. Kente, if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Kente Ferguson. I am from Los Angeles, California. I have a website called indyradio.org. That's indyradio.org. On indyradio.org, we produce several different podcasts. We talk about relationships. We talk about Hollywood, entertainment, social issues as well. I am a filmmaker, writer, director, producer who has many projects that are on the way. I'm very excited to, I'll be talking about it in 2019. I am a admirer of Dr. Vibe. He's one of my favorite content creators, and he's definitely have been a someone that I look up to in this game. So I am very happy to be here, and I'm excited to have this conversation, be a part of this conversation.
Well, Kente, thank you so much for your kind words, and right back at you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of a project you're going to be doing in January. So thank you so much. And I won't get into that because it's your thing. I'm not going to talk about it. You'll talk about it when you need to. And how you look up to me and I look up to you. I look up to this gentleman here, Glenn Barker, Executive Director of the Mankind Project. Had a chance to meet him many years ago. And he really took my passion for manhood to the next level. And Glenn has been a mentor of mine for many years, and he has helped me accelerate my work with men and fathers. For those who don't know, I'm actually the program coordinator for the only father-focused family center in all of Canada. So Glenn has been very helpful in regards to that and mentoring. And he's based in Chicago. Kente is going to Chicago, and Glenn said everyone ends up in Chicago some way, somehow. Glenn, could you just give a little background about yourself to our wonderful audience?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us to be informed and educated along these lines. I believe the world of men, the understanding of men, and how they get wired and how they interact with their world is, in some ways, very much we're left on our own to figure these things out. And I think the lack of mentorship and good guidance, because I believe much of the development of the mature masculine is not instinct, it's a tutelage. And in the absence of mentors and teachers, we find, I think, men struggle in ways that makes me sad. And what the effect it has in our society and our communities is distressing to me. So I hope that my work and the work of these men, that we can provide some semblance of what the men's community looks like, what these teachings, what this mentoring could look like, so that we can enable ourselves to be a gift to each other and a gift to this world. And I've been in this work for many years, known many great men, and among them, those that join us today. So I do run a center in Chicago. It's called the Mankind Project. It's worldwide now, and I believe that we are the largest center in that network. So we do 6 or 7 great big trainings every year, sometimes 100 men each on these trainings. We have over 700 men's groups, all kinds of developmental training about integrity and accountability, and we help each other. We mentor each other, and we provide a good sense of being tolerant of our imperfections and intolerant of the bullshit of the stuff that we like to make up. So we hope to be with men that are pretending that these things stop pretending that these things don't exist, because they do. Our actions and inactions of this world, taking responsibility and not making excuses anymore. This takes good men to do this without shaming and blaming and harming each other or giving each other a pass. That's our charge. And I'm glad to say we're part of a small corner of the world of very powerful men that have this consciousness and are looking to teach it as best we know how. So thank you for joining us. And let's begin.
Uh-oh, you're muted, I think. Dr.
Sorry.
Von.
Oh, sorry, I'm good now. Sorry about that, everyone who was listening. Before we get started, a few shout outs. So Steph, thank you. Dre, Jada, Aaron, Patrick, and on the Periscope side, I Can Do Dave from Australia and you Foresight. For those who don't know, Glenn and I have done about, along with another gentleman, Dr. Marvin Thompson, at least 25 conversations together over the last few years. And we let Glenn lead because he has the evaluated experience. I treat him as an elder. And just before you get started, Glenn, approximately how many men have you mentored or done sessions with in your time?
Oh my goodness.
Approximate.
I don't know. I'm lost count many years ago, but I'm in the thousands.
Okay. So that's why I let him lead, folks. So Glenn, go ahead, please.
All right. So I've been asked to join the discussion today on manhood versus masculinity. And it's easy to talk about both, but in juxtaposition to each other, I believe they are so enmeshed and it has to be so contextual that otherwise it can drift into all kinds of things. So what I'd like to maybe ask of the group and those that call in, let's look at masculinity as a set of traits, things that could be depicted, mannerisms, right? And let's look at manhood as more developmental. At what stage can someone say they're in their manhood years? And if we have that kind of distinction, I think it might help the conversation, because even if you go to your dictionary and you look up these two, there are many overlapping traits. And so it could be, anyway, it could be a struggle, I think, to try to make a distinction between the two. Are we agreed? Let's try to put it in that category, men.
I'm good.
Okay. So what I'll start with, and anybody can jump in, let's look at the traits of masculinity. How do we define masculinity? I'll start by saying that there are attributes to the male that are masculine in nature. Now, these constructs, this is more of a social construct, meaning this has changed over time. At one point, they would say, you never give a man a sword who doesn't know how to dance. What that means, right? So what that means, that was the time of the Renaissance man, when you were looked upon as a mature man, and your masculinity was expressed in the variety of things that you could apply yourself to judiciously and responsibly for. And that could be painting, animal husbandry, courtship, right? How you handle your finances, right? Don't know how to dance and treat people well before you are trusted with a sword, right? That was a well-rounded man that many admire of that time because it had many aspects. And the way I see masculinity, if I may indulge the audience and you men with a parable, maybe a story. You all right with that?
Go ahead, please.
So think of men as trees. How many different trees are there in the world? Hundreds? Thousands? How do trees express themselves? Some flower, some grow, some are tall, some are big and thick, and some are spindly and wide. I believe men's expression of masculinity are as varied as there are species of trees. And I think how that is expressed comes somewhat like a tree from the seed, from the DNA we're given. Are you born big and tall and have a lot of mass to your body, or are you slight and slender and shorter in stature? This comes not so much by choice, does it? This is your DNA. This is the type of seed you are. Now, where does that seed land? You know, a tree can land in a very rocky soil where it has very tumultuous weather and drought, and that tree may be dwarfed by some ways. If it gets struck by lightning, that means it got wounded. That may change how it can or can't develop. True. So is true with men. Others that fall into wonderful soil, which are nurtured well and grow straight and tall and seem to not have any problems throughout their whole lives, this happens as well. So if I was to look at masculinity, how it develops in men, and how men express that masculinity, consider the variables as much as these. Trees of all kinds, of all shapes, of all expressions, and all kinds of different conditions. Yet, they're all trees, right? The thing that makes us different than the tree is that we as men can change our environment. We may not be able to change our DNA. We may struggle with repairing those wounds that we've gotten as we've grown up. And that will take some work to do, some struggle. Yet, unlike the tree, we can uproot ourselves. We can plant ourselves in more fertile soil, right? We can nurture ourselves and nurture those around us so that we don't have to carry those woundings on. So in that light of how masculinity can be expressed, let's discuss the male. Any comments on that, men, before we continue?
I can't say if you want to go first, if anything.
No. I mean, I like it. I like it. It's very poetic and it's straight to the point.
So, Glenn, this comparison of men to trees, how did you come up with that comparison or analysis?
Well, I'm a fan of the parable, and I have a few. So storytelling, say in the days of Robert Bly, I think sometimes the mythopoetic part or the storytelling, the metaphor, I think carries in my imaginings, a way to talk about something or express something that is universal and maybe timeless. So I was always drawn to that. And in my so many years of working with so many kinds of men, it just really, Dr. Vibe, it just actually came to me one day I was looking at the variety of men and how they express themselves and their masculinity. And I simply said, I cannot categorize men and how they express themselves. The masculinity expresses themselves. There are too many variables. So it just came to me, wow, what else has so many variables in this world? And it simply as that, it just came to me, trees. And once I did that, it came to me. It came to me in a flash, and I scribbled it all down, and I hope you enjoyed the story. It's a different way of teaching.
Absolutely. Go ahead. No problem. And actually, I can do, Dave said, a perfect parable, sir. And as a speaker, I would like very much to use it when mentoring young men.
It's a way of honoring as well, isn't it? Because don't you look at an apple tree and say, wow, how magnificent. And don't you then look at an oak and say, oh my, look at this, look at the majesty, right? And don't you look at a small sapling and say, oh, the best to you, small sapling, hang on there. It's a tough winter. I know you're going to make it, right? And if you put men in that light, I think it maybe speak more to your heart, right? To say, we are all in development. We are all on a path. We're all doing our best with what we have, right? Now, what could be used by those of us like here that have been down the road a piece is to nurture, right, and help grow. Whatever we can do to be generative, what can we do to help fertilize that soil, to help encourage the sunlight to come in, and if possible, transplant that plant if need be, right, to someplace where it can grow, and hopefully it'll take. Sometimes it don't. That may be it. Sadly and wonderfully, the best we can do.
I think we lost them for
Agreed.
a second. Excellent. Before you go on, Glenn, I want to shout out to Bobby.
I just want to say my wonderful co-host from Cinema de Fromage and the Spotlight and many other shows. Jen is in the chat room as well. I want to make sure I give her a shout out.
Excellent. And anyone, there is an open spot if you want to ask questions, or you can put comments or questions on the side. Also, too, before we leave this before you leave, Glenn, Dave wants to know about any information about the Mankind Project in Australia, if they have any contacts there. Or so what I'll do, Dave, is
so
get this contact information
masculinity and as far as attributes go, these are social constructs. In other words, what would be called masculine in one culture may not be called masculine in another. Same thing across time. So in some cultures, men can wear, as you know, kilts and skirts, and this is considered quite masculine. In some cultures, the men can weave and sew and dance, and this is considered very masculine. And others, these things are prohibited. These things are ridiculed. So from culture to culture, from time to time, we find that masculinity is a social construct. And so now, as an individual, as we are in these Western worlds of ours, it is not only a social construct, it's also quite subjective. It's what somebody's opinion is. Now, there are those things that we attribute to males, the muscularity of the male. Just the sheer fact that we're born with 20 or 30% more muscle mass means our bodies move different, right? Maybe larger, stronger, faster. And some of the things are obvious. The things that are masculine are typically that muscle mass. You'll even see that women will be called more masculine when they have a more muscular physique, right? There are things we attribute even to non-human things. If you can walk into a room that's mahoganies and brown leathers and golds and dark greens, you say that's a masculine room, right? So there are things that are, regardless of many people's perception of what masculinity is interpreted as, still seem to attribute masculine and feminine aspects to the body, to the psyche, to the language, to your voice quality, to the aesthetics. All of these things impart to us what, of course, we know is not quite binary, but it helps our mind to think in binary terms. Is it male or female, masculine or feminine? So masculinity is a social construct. Now, could you see a world where all men wear skirts and all women are weightlifters? This could be, right? This could be. So any comments? Well, I'll stop now. I'll stop and make comments. Tell me about your perception, men, of masculinity. How would you describe it, say, in our culture, in our time? Please jump in. For context.
Sure. I guess when you talk about masculinity,
you
can talk about it from different points of view. Like you said, the social construct. You can talk about it from your own personal belief of what masculinity is. I go from big shout out to Steve and Tachi as well, Dr. Tachi. I always refer back to my father. My father was the first example I had of masculinity and manhood together. And my father always told me that when it comes to manhood and masculinity is you take care of your family. You be a credit to your community. You be a credit to your race. It wasn't defined by how strong you were or how many people you beat up or how many babies you make. That you actually, masculinity is more so about how you walk, how what you put out there into the world. And with that said, I think unfortunately a lot of us have a very skewed view of what real masculinity is or what real manhood is. And one thing that I was so glad that we were having this conversation, I remember brother Eskia talked about this, is that because the lack of true positive male role models in different communities, we don't necessarily understand what that is. Or, like I was fortunate, and I've said this before, my father, my uncles, my cousin, I always had strong male influences. And for some people, male and female, there's just zero. There's zero. The dope dealer on the corner to them is a strong, masculine figure, or something like that. And these conversations are so important because we have to change that ideology of what a man is, and that we need to get back to some of those principles that we used to have when it came to how we displayed our manhood or our masculinity.
Thanks. I've got Melvin Lars here from Louisiana that is joined us. So thanks for joining in, Melvin. I haven't heard from you in a bit, but you jumped in, so that's all good. Glenn, I want to jump on that, and we may not get through everything. We may need to do a part 2, but just in the fact that Kinte mentioned there, what about the men who didn't have a father in regards to manhood and masculinity? How is that deal?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. One is, I'll say, like I said in my long, I'm going to try to take care of this echo for us too. Sorry.
Yeah, if you could.
So, in the absence of teachers, that's what I say. Becoming the mature masculine, for it to develop, is not instinct. It's not. It's a tutelage. And in the absence of the teachers and the mentors, you get Lord of the Flies. You know what I'm talking about with Lord of the Flies? That's right. That's called pooarchy. That's the rule of boys, and it's dangerous. That's a story, you'll see it in our streets. Boys try to initiate boys, and the kind of things that they make up in order for them to prove themselves, to be loved by their peers, to be accepted, and to become a man. This is horrific. And it's filling our jails, and it's killing our sons, and it's making our neighborhoods dangerous. So that's what happens. That's the effect side of the cause you're talking about. So, and in the absence of all that, 60 to 70% of men in this who have had children are not living in the home. So this burden gets shifted to the women. And I think they do a great job of trying to instill good masculine traits, but without the young male to be able to interact with multi-generational men, where he can model himself after and measure himself against, cannot bring that into his empty hole that has been left by the absent or remote father, that cannot, in my estimation, truly be filled by the feminine. It is exposure, or after exposure, after time, and close proximity with the kind of male that he can measure himself against and that he loves and respects. And in the absence of that, gentlemen, we have much work to do.
And can I say this, that it's not just a father, because there are fathers that are there, but they ain't blank. I ain't gonna say it, but you know what I'm saying? And they do more damage being there than sometimes if they weren't there. So it's not, it's a strong male presence, I think is more important than just a male presence.
You're right. Thank you for the question. It is a mature male presence. It could be an uncle, father, mentor, teacher. And in fact, it's good to have several coach. It's good to have these different examples of expressions of the different expressions of mature masculine, like the different trees. So the young man can then see where he fits, see where he doesn't fit, take the fruit, right? And nurture his soul around his own development. And someone who carries the young man in his heart. Right? Someone that carries the young man in his heart, right? That's kind of looking after the well-being of this young man. There was a time, if you were a mature, stable, grown man, if you weren't mentoring a young man or more, you'd be looked at as, what's with you? You need to be in that boys' school over there and take on a few mentees. How come you don't have a protege or 2 or 3? This is time, sadly, has passed. And I just think also, what's finally coming to the consciousness of all America is the consciousness of the mature masculine's contribution beyond his breadwinning. I hope I make up that. I make up that it might be. It is time. We know it's time that maybe it's starting to wake up in the consciousness of the nation.
Okay, before we get on, I know Melvin, you probably
What
want
up,
to
Melvin?
share, so go ahead.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey, listen, I can't
Outstanding.
complain. I'm
Blessed.
just
Yourself.
excited about this conversation as I hear Brother Kente and Brother Barker and yourself embarking upon this conversation. Brother Kente hit it just hit the ball out of the park just a moment ago because I love to share about the dad in the house, but he's not home. And as we know, as we talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, respectfully, let me share that we know the women are not having the babies by themselves, whereby there has to be a male present someplace. And I'm reasonably sure at least, that is not always disappearing. So as we talk about man and manhood and masculinity and those kinds of situations, and all of us are mature enough to understand that psychologically speaking, there are a lot of damaged and broken men, unfortunately, because of generational situations that have occurred.
Right.
The sad part is that we do not work with those individuals that are broken. You know, we simply make the statement that, well, he's old enough, or he should be mature enough, or he should know better, without taking into consideration that in his brokenness, he can benefit from those of us who feel as though we are stable, from those of us that feel as though we have a modicum of integrity, from those of us that really feel endeared and required, have a responsibility to be mentors and mentees and work with these young men. So I would just want to share is that I agree with everything that's being said. However, I just like to share that as we are challenging our fellow men, is that we also, those of us that are strong enough, also mentor them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, you're on the same page.
Agreed.
Yes.
Glenn, continue on unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add in. But to let
And I like these
continue on,
pauses
go
where I
for
say,
it,
"Man, give me your take on these things." You know, like we've just witnessed. There are, as trees, so many varieties of the male expression, the masculine expression, and they're not all good. And if they've been wounded and we're carrying a multi-generational absence of mentoring and tutelage, how can we give what we don't have?
Right.
How can we give what we never got?
Right.
Right. It ain't gonna happen. And there's a tsunami of this going on in our world. And sometimes I must confess, I feel that I am just a drop in the ocean. Right. Although there's been thousands of men who've come through my life and through the organizations that I've been part of, it still seems like, you know, it is, how are we going to break this cycle? And be careful, because it is that much. It's like the old story, a bunch of starfish on the shore and a man's throwing one or two back in, and someone says, why bother? What's the difference? And he says, well, it made a difference to that one. It made a difference to that one. It made a difference to that one. So
Absolutely.
I do urge all the men and the women. Now, there's a role for women in all this, and maybe we can do that as a go around here, men. What is the role of women in supporting the contribution that the male can make in the lives of their families, of their communities, in the world? I do believe if that was started to creep more into consciousness of the world of the feminine, that, believe me, men gravitate to what we celebrate. We start celebrating, we emulate what we celebrate. We truly do. So if we're emulating and celebrating thugs and deserters and men who don't take responsibility, the men will emulate that, if that's what we're celebrating. If the women and the men are celebrating, we say, men of integrity, men of strength and courage, men of commitment, men that are authentic, right? And they're honoring that, and they're praising that, and they're pointing it out and going, ooh, that's what I like. The men will gravitate to that because they want that for themselves. So possibly, if you would, men, let's do a round of what is the contribution of the feminine in the development of the mature masculine. Gentlemen, I'd like to hear your take.
Who wants to go first on that?
I'll go first, Dr. Vibe and Brother Kit and Brother Barker. First of all, let me say very quickly that I'm loving the conversation. And when you express the fact that sometimes you feel like just a drop in the ocean, we know drops in the water makes ripples. So we can make positive change and positive effects. And getting to the more immediate question, it is my opinion, I'm just one person, but it is my opinion that women play a huge role. Unfortunately, we depend too much on women. And why do I say we depend too much on women? Is because, as we know, women are the primary ones that rear the children. And dad is usually the enforcer. Wait till your dad comes home, talk to the kid about hunting or drinking, or you have that talk, or you have the first beer and that kind of thing, rather than being there throughout the entire process of rearing that young man through his education, the importance of it, through building relationships, the importance of it, through knowing how to deal and work with women, the importance of it. So I again feel very strongly that we that women have a very strong influence in what we do, and dare I say respectfully to every man on this call, on this video, because we are on air, women can stop and we know very well how they can stop it is by raising their standards and not laying down with everybody. I don't care what people say. It does make a difference. The opinion that a woman has of you as a suitor, if I can use the word pursuer. And if women were to raise their standards, they could stop a lot of it. But at the same time, we have to raise our standards and be more particular about where we decide to share our body parts.
Mm-hmm. I will say this. I will add this to what he was saying is, I do believe women do play a huge part, and I agree with Barker and Melvin. But at the end of the day, we can't control what women do. Only thing we can do is control ourselves. So although it would be nice for that to happen, we can't rest on that happening. So the only thing we can do as men is to be the best versions of ourselves as possible. And, and hopefully that will mean something, I always say that if you take care of yourself and what you do, it just will, the things that should happen will come along. I just feel like that. Maybe that's Pollyannish, but that's how I feel. And I feel like there's too many of us men out there that, we go for what's easy. We go, cause to be acting a fool is easy. To be ignorant is easy. You don't have to there's no college for that. You know what I'm saying? You just do it, So I think too many of us, we go for the low hanging fruit. We go for, the easy way out. And it's really sad, it's really sad because sometimes even so-called men of substance will do that, or what you would say men of substance. And in a perfect world, these certain qualities that we're saying would be more attractive to women in general. But, it is what it is. The only thing we can control is our own actions. And, I think another thing that we have to do is us guys need to stop lying to younger men, because a lot of the bad info I got, were from older guys who were, full of boo-boo. They lie about how, when I was a certain age, I was a player and I had every woman and all of that kind of stuff. And I decided when I came into this earth, I was an uncle, right? I had already had a niece, right? And I have a lot of nephews and nieces, right? And I decided a long time ago that I was gonna not be the uncle that brings my nephews and nieces to debauchery, because I think it's Chris Rock has this whole bit about you get everything from your uncle is the one that gives you your first joint, your first drink. I decided I wasn't gonna be that dude, that if you're going to find debauchery, you're going to find it on your own, right? And I think a lot of us, we need to be that light, that beacon, and stop lying to these kids about, things that aren't true, and just we need to change the mentality of these young men that are coming up. And so going back to what you're saying, yes, I believe that women have a huge part into it, because if you make a certain kind of guy toxic, where if he comes to the barbecue, everybody just ignores him, that kind of stuff, then it's going to make you change who you are. And I think certain guys are not toxic, in our communities, like they need to be that way. I feel like we need to shame and shun.
I'll just be quick onto that. And Glenn, you were saying about the woman's role. I guess the best answer I can give to that off the top of my head is my dad always tells me that the reason that we're here is because of your mother. So honoring the woman, but honoring the lady, I think is part of that in regards to how their role is important. Honor them. If they have done honorable things, we need to honor them in our lives. It's very, very important. So I think that's, I'm just going to keep short and sweet on that. I'm just going to read some quick comments saying there is symmetry in what is being said here. Balance is so important. Tati says, this also means that we have to hold media accountable for the images of toxic masculinity and misogyny. That's also being put out there. I don't know if we'll get to the media end tonight, but for me, the manhood and masculinity piece is the ladies' role is important, but we also have to honor the ladies, because if we don't honor them, they're not going to help us, and we need their help. So I'll just put it out there. Glenn, you can continue, and thanks everyone for the comments. And if anyone does want to jump in, just message me, but continue on.
So thank you, everybody. And I think we can move from, say, arena to arena. Now we could talk about community or peer groups. How influential do you believe or not those that you keep company with? How important are they, number one, for you to be a part of some tribe, right? And believe me, if you have a few choices of tribes to belong to, then realize if you do not, you will maybe be ostracized or removed or shamed or peer pressured to some point where you don't have friends. And for many, belonging to a tribe means more to them than their own self-esteem, than their own dignity, and to many of the rules that they, if they were on their own, would have a whole different set of criteria for. So to speak to me, men, in a way that you see or not, a peer group, and you'll see nuclear family and community, right, have an influence in what it is to go with that consensus or to go against it. Gentlemen, please tell me your input.
I would say this, that I think you have to be not afraid to be a lone wolf if possible. I really believe the company you keep plays a big part on what you put out in the world. I'm a big person in energy, negative and positive, and sometimes certain situations can provide that. A lot of people I know who been in, hooked up in the jail system or whatever, a lot of it is because of who they surround themselves with. And so I think that there's a lot to it, right? And I think for myself, when I got to a certain age, I had to let some people go, not because I didn't love them, not because I didn't, I got too big for them or whatever. It was just that their vibe, their energy was not positive. You know what I mean? And it can be hurtful to that person. It can also be sad to yourself, but you have to be able to do that. And it's not that you don't love them. You can love them from a distance. Some people just need to grow up and get to a place where they can get their self together. And it's okay. You know, you don't have to do a press conference and say, hey, I'm no longer Melvin's friend because he's out in the streets, you know, doing his thing. You don't have to do that, but sometimes you do got to do that. So it's very important. Family you inherit, right? You don't pick your family, you know. Family is can be hard, but sometimes you got to cut your family loose. I know people had to cut their parents loose, you know. So you know it just, you know, you have to always do self-care with yourself, and you have to really recognize your surroundings and what's going on. And always, I think you always need to do something where you're elevating yourself. And you know, it's very important. And real quick, big shout out to Ricardo. He's in the chat room. I haven't talked to this brother in so long. You know, I have to give him a shout out.
No problem.
Well, you know, Brother Glenn and Brother Kente and Dr. Vibe, I agree with what Brother Kente is saying. As having worked with young people the majority of my life and having been a young person myself, we are well aware, or should be well aware, that far too many times young people, even those older guys, are more impressed with the fact that we are more concerned about what our friends, associates, or acquaintances may think, as opposed to working on our own self-esteem. And that can be very devastating to people at times because they are inundated with individuals making snide remarks, making unflattering comments, trying to make people feel uncomfortable in their space. So there are a lot of things that that you're faced with as Glenn is sharing with us tonight, and you wonder why kids make decisions that they make. And when you speak with, will oftentimes share with you that, well, my friend is not doing it, or I don't want to be left out, or I feel like a loner. You know, it's kind of like the statement, whether the kids sit by themselves in the cafeteria, why they segregated, et cetera, et cetera. Because many times Glenn mentioned and used the word tribe to describe individuals looking for a camaraderie, if I may use that word. And unfortunately, when you are an individual that is strong enough within yourself not to worry about that tribe, then you are also labeled as being stuck up or as thinking that you are better than someone else. You are called many times antisocial, and the adverbs and the adjectives never stop. So, you know, we just have to be strong enough to understand that I am going to do what's best for me and for my situation.
I just want to jump in here. You first sight on Periscope said something interesting, and I want to get the everyone's feedback here. He says, "I think we're talking about the young generation, not the older generation."
I totally understand, but I disagree because, you know, look, perfect example. I know that this is not a political conversation. I know we're not discussing 45, but just, and I'm serious, just look to see what's happening in America right now. Just this very, very moment. We've just finished talking about people having integrity and men of strength and all of this kind of thing. Yet our young people are watching the older ones of us just cave in and be a part of the atrocity, not showing any integrity, not showing anything of substance that would prove to them that they should follow in our footsteps. Because I'm telling you, as the gentleman just stated about, sounds like we're talking to the young people. You know, I said earlier about mentoring the older gentleman because we badly. I say we because I'm of a male species, but we meet mentoring badly because, and I'll end with this: continue to watch all of the political hubbub, because that's all it is, political hubbub. And you have an individual in this country that people say, oh man, he's done a great job. And you see the lies, you see the deceit, you see all of the phoniness. I mean, you know, and it's been proven day after day after day that he has no integrity, etc. So, but we as adults turn around and talk to young people about bullying. Who bullies more than the person that's supposed to be leading this country? So we have to be very careful when we start pointing to our young people. I do agree with the gentleman. He says, we're talking to the young people. We have to walk our own talk.
Well, it's interesting. Patrick says here on the Get Vocal side, says we don't have the typical old wise generation anymore. And he also says, as youth is glorified in media, many older people buy into having to imitate the philosophy of the younger.
Well, you know, the age difference too between like grandma used to be way older. Now grandma is like in her 30s, you know, so it is really different. So
yeah.
Glenn,
all right, gentlemen, and we've almost done 3/4 of the hour just on introducing our definitions of masculinity, as always, right, Dr. Vibe, as always.
That's why we're part 2. So
let's shift to manhood. What is it? How is it defined? Now, manhood different than being masculine. So masculinities or masculine are traits, is the way we put them, or ways that the male can be depicted, or the aesthetics, or the attributes. Manhood, on the other hand, let's talk about manhood as developmental. At what point? Is it when he's 13 years old, or is it when he assumes responsibility and independence for his own well-being and those around him? Gentlemen, I'd like to hear your definition of manhood, the transition into manhood, and what does that look like around?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a particular age, because I remember my father used to always say when I was a kid, you know, because, you know, when you're like 15, 16, you start thinking you're a man. And then he would always say, you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, you know? So I don't think it's like an age. I don't think it's like the minute you hit 18, you're a man, you know? Maybe legally you're one, you know, like as far as how's the state, you know, sees it. But right. I think manhood is, when you reach manhood, is more so when you are out on your own, you are, you know, you can provide for yourself. You can, you can now start, you know, living your life in that regard. I believe that's more so than just an age, because you can be like, you could be 40 and still be a boy, you know. So it's not just necessarily a number. It's more so your grind and what you're doing in the world. So
let's get manhood.
So, and what do you?
What's it look like?
What do you say, boys? Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to wait until you guys finished, because as we talk about manhood and what it looks like, transition. I have to, if I may piggyback on Brother Kente. I have a problem with our legalizing manhood. When we say he's 18, he can go to the military and lose his life. When he's 21, he can have a drink. That kind of thing. Because as we all know, and I have to speak as an educator, as we all know, human beings develop at various stages in their lives, but because it's convenient for the older of us to get out of them what we want out of them, then we place parameters as to when they will become a man, when they will become a child, and we don't even want to start discussing the court system. You know, is when you take some child and try to make him a man because of your own anger or your own beliefs and that kind of thing. So we know very well, and we know full well, that people mature at a different level. We can talk about the maturation process as far as when puberty begins. So just for me, I don't think that there is a concrete answer as to manhood. And obviously we would all like to think that once we start making positive decisions about the things that we do as far as educating ourselves, getting a job, taking care of our families, avoiding incarceration and avoiding the kinds of things that will cause us to be incarcerated, taking into consideration situations that it will put our families in if we were to make certain decisions. So there are a litany of things that just in my living, in my experience of working with young men and women and of maturing myself, that would factor into that answer, because I just see it all of the time, and I'm sure you gentlemen do too. You know, that you can go to war, and people call you a hero, and you can't even walk across the street and chew bubble gum at the same time. You know, or you can't take a drink until you're 21, but you can lose your life at 19, 18, or you can be deemed an adult at 12 or 13. So I just don't think there's a concrete answer.
You know, Glenn, this part of the conversation is making me remember a little while back yourself and Dr. Thompson and myself. We did the 4 archetypes of a man. And I think we may need to rehash that again, because I think that was quite an epic 4 conversations. I think in lieu of time, I'll just keep it short and sweet. There's no defined age for me when it comes to manhood, but to me, one of those things about manhood is when a man can admit when he's right and when he's wrong. Like, to me, that's a key point in regards to that, right and wrong. Like, to be honest with himself, but also be honest so much he can be with others and honestly say, I screwed up. I think that's characteristics I'm looking for when it comes to manhood.
I love that too, by the way, because it's not easy sometimes to admit when you're wrong. You know,
it's not.
But you know, sometimes you got to do it. I know some people, they will say they were right with all the evidence showing otherwise. They will ride the Titanic all the way to the bottom of the sea, and you know, it's crazy to me. It's like, dude, just admit it, man. You know, and let's move on. You know.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. We're in the final segment of this talk, and like I say, how wonderful to have men that can discuss things on this level. Let's maybe talk about now, as Dr. Vibe mentioned. First of all, let's put it in 2 categories. Let's draw 2 lines in your mind that might be useful to everybody as we're starting to conclude here. Let's in your mind draw a horizontal line, okay, in your mind. And on the left side, let's see if we can develop for ourselves and for our world powerful men, competent men, responsible men that aren't abusers. There is a way to separate male power from abuse, and that's our goal. 1, 2. On the other end of the spectrum, let us find that we can develop within ourselves and each other compassionate, caring, gentle, loving men that don't allow themselves to be abused for it. That are strong enough to have boundaries so that when they expose this wonderful part of their nurturing and caring, that they hold the space to say, and that's what makes a man as powerful as his strength. If we can achieve that through that line, I think that is a male we long for, and that can contribute a lot to this world. Now let's draw a vertical line. On the left side, let us put boys make excuses. On the right side, put men take responsibility. I know when I'm in my boy, when I'm making excuses. I know I'm growing the man when I take responsibility for my role. Did I not act, or did I act? What was my part in the situation? Now, that's not the same as blame for everything. That is to realize there's an impact and consequence to everything you do and do not do. With those 2 axes in mind, I believe there is a world where we can help each other as men to be in that wheelhouse and feel good about ourselves, to grow our integrity, to hold ourselves and each other accountable, and to have the kind of important dialogue and action in the world that helps grow better men. I'll leave it at that, and I'll take any comments, and I know we're just about on our way out. And I want to thank you all, men, for great conversation this evening.
Yes.
Any comments for Glenn, either in the chat room or from Melvin or Kinte before I let Glenn? We'll continue the conversation, but Glenn usually just comes on for an hour because he drops so many knowledge bombs. He leaves us to sort of simmer them in our head. Any final comments or things?
I like what he said, that I'm in my boy when I'm making excuses. Uh, it's almost like that the thing in the back of your head, when you are in your boy, as you call it. That no, you're right. You're 100% right. And I think even evolved men, at certain times we do get in our boy, like, and sometimes, and sometimes you gotta, and get yourself back rewired. So, but some people stay in it 24/7. So,
Yeah.
so, that's a big difference between, those two realities. I don't know. I think it's something that you always get, a good friend of mine named Ramsey, he always says, he's a podcaster as well, that when I stopped lying to myself, that's when I became a better person. And I think that I think we lie to ourselves so much about everything, and if we're just honest with ourselves, like completely honest, look ourselves in the mirror, that would change a lot, I think, and the way that we act, the way that we get down. But we lie to ourselves. We say that bump on our lip is a beauty mark when it's a cancerous tumor. You know what I'm saying? We lie to ourselves about we're happy with our work situation. We lie to ourselves about the reason why we're stepping out on our girlfriend or wives. We we just lie. And if you're more honest with yourself about your situation and what you're putting out into the world, then you have no choice but to correct your behavior. So when you're in your boy, and you can realize, okay, I am doing that. I think that goes a long way. And I think most people, when you course correct, most people will forgive you for a lot of stuff when you course correct, And I think we got to realize that, because, look, I've been wrong before, and, I've done people wrong, and I thought I was right. But then I realized, you know what? I was wrong as heck. And then I course corrected. And most people will forgive you because they appreciate that you took a look at the situation and you realize, you know what? I wasn't right. How I handled it wasn't right. That wasn't how I want to, promote myself. And, most people will accept that if you do that. And, and I think we have to realize that.
And that's risky business, though, right? Because someone can weaponize your confession, right? And that's what I don't blame them, right? They weaponize your confession and they use it against you. So this is very fearful for men to expose themselves to this, and rightly so. And that's another part of our work, men.
Yeah. Melvin, any last words?
I concur with Brother Kente. I think he summed it up beautifully. I enjoyed listening and sharing with Brother Glenn, and always you, Dr. Vibe. Brother Kente, I think you knocked it out of the park, brother.
Thank you.
The one last thing I'm going to add to what Glenn said about the boys make excuses, men take responsibility. Either way, you're going to have an influence. It's either going to be positive influence or negative influence. So if you're making excuses, it's going to have a lot of times a downside influence. If you're taking responsibility, it's going to have upside influence. Glenn, any last words?
I'd say, well, I just got another invitation here from Dr. Vive to revisit the archetypes of the mature masculine. And that's it's a very in-depth subject. I think it's a construct for how to build a man and how to measure yourself as a man and how to help each other as men. And it's, like I say, it's a very big subject. It's fascinating to me. It always has been. And if you want to revisit that, it will have to be at minimum a 4-part series. At minimum. With all the shadow pull, it could be a 12-part series, as you know, with all the aspects of it. So with that, maybe I'll shout out my contact information if someone wants to get a hold of me.
Please.
Very good. If you'd like to speak with me, Glenn Barker, if you like these teachings, if you like what you heard, you want to maybe start a men's group in your community, call me. Glenn Barker, it's at 312-243-6743. 312-243-6743. I can be reached Mankind Project on Twitter, MKP Chicago on Facebook, and on the web. Contact me. Be glad to help. And thanks for listening.
Glenn, thank you so much. Best of the holiday season. We'll certainly chat with each other before the end of the year. And Kinte's going to beat me to Chicago, but my goal is to get to Chicago next year.
Great. Love to have you.
Have a good one, Glenn.
All right.
Thanks
Just
again.
followed you on Twitter.
There you go. Good night,
Good night.
Glenn.
All right.
All right. So we're continuing our recording here. Thanks everyone who stopped by and to catch a conversation. We're going to continue it on. If anyone would like to take a spot, and we'll continue this conversation about manhood and masculinity. And at the front end, I told you why I respect Glenn when especially comes to teachings and thought process of manhood. He's actually personally done sessions with over 5,000 men.
That's a lot of men, Dr. Vod.
Yeah.
It's a lot of men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So that evaluated experience. Yeah, Aaron, if you want to come on in, no problem. And so continue the conversation for a little bit. Is that Leah World Traveler that's in the room? If it is, great to see you. Hey, Aaron, how you doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing fantastic.
Good. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for your comments on the side. What would you like to add in?
Oh, fantastic what you guys are doing. I just think that a lot of times when we're talking about masculinity or male gender, that we use different terminology to express basically the same things that women express in these feminine gender roles. And a lot of times we don't realize that this law of gender, all humans have this aspect of masculine roles. And I think that the more evolved human will embrace this. Also, I did want to dive deep. I only have a few minutes before, maybe I could probably stretch it to 20 minutes, but about how roles, war, we send the men to war. There goes in society that has war, this gender role is, the mom raises the kid.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Melvin, I'm getting, someone's got, it can't be Kinte. Melvin, do you have another computer on in the background? Because I'm hearing echoing.
No, I do not.
Okay. I just thought, okay, we'll continue on because I'm just hearing echoing periodically, but continue on. Sorry for the interruption there. I just wanted to see if I could get rid of the echoing I'm hearing, but continue on.
Okay, maybe it was my volume was up too high. I think that there's, I don't remember his name now. It was obvious when he was up on screen.
Glenn Barker.
Yeah, Glenn, was bringing up some just huge points about, self-improvement. I mean, we can call it a men's group or a men's role. But in reality, isn't that what the evolved man is looking for in a woman? Many of the same traits as far as honor and respect and, fortitudes and standing up for the moral right. Yeah. And then how does society affect that when we're talking about parts of society that have been raised without that male figure because they've been killed off in war, and these orphans that just they're in the boys club, they're in the Lost Boys Club, they're Peter Pan, in this paradigm where that basic human need of social acceptance is void, and ergo filled by available, which in a lot of the war structure of society, or even the work structure of society, removes that, or even removes both parents in today's modern society, where both parents have to work and you have to have a daycare. Right. How does that really affect the humanity of it all? I know I'm digging deep, but those are some of the questions that
anyone want to jump in what regards Aaron has just shared in regards to the whole thing of roles definition. I know a lot of men out there don't know what it is to be a man anymore because there's so many different definitions, so many constructs going on. What do you guys want to add to what Aaron has just shared?
as Aaron was sharing, and he was talking about war and men being taken away from their families, that in and of itself is extremely important. And sadly, when you express whatever Aaron is expressing, as far as men being removed, then of course you are labeled as non-patriotic, un-American, and all those insane kinds of things. When you are or not jumping up and down about going over to kill somebody or the possibility of being killed, and as Aaron said a moment ago, he was going deep. If I can go a little deeper, Aaron, most of the time guys don't even know why they're going over shooting at other people anyway, or why they're being shot at, other than what somebody is telling them. And when you find out that the whole premise has been set because some rich guys want to get richer because they want to steal people's oil or diamonds or whatever the case may be, and then they try to make you feel unpatriotic. But at the same time, you are maligned for not being available as a father, and you have just shared those things, Aaron. And I'm happy to see that someone on here, I say someone, but Dr. Vibe, and this is my first time being with Kente, but just listening at him, these brothers always go deep, and so I'm glad that you're here going deeply, because that's what happens, is that we skate around what really happens so much until we never get anything done. And we just glad hand. I'm talking about the universal we. I'm not talking about those of us on this call. We glad hand people, and we never get to the crux of what's actually taking place. And it's great that you have come on and you are getting to the crux of what actually happens. When we have orphans, and dare I say, and I'll be done. I know Brother Kente want to share. When you sit like I do, and you watch all of these political proceedings, and they have all of these laws that are submitted to assist veterans for PTSD and homelessness and all these things, and you have all these rich fat cats sitting up voting no because they want to continue to line their pockets. So we need to go deep, and I appreciate you for going deep.
Very well said. Yes. No, I mean, I definitely agree. That idea of this fake patriotism or whatever. I agree with you on that. I don't know. The way I feel like, you called it a Peter Pan syndrome. Was it? Did you say that?
Peter Pan,
yeah,
like the Lost Boys of Peter Pan.
Right.
Just a bunch of.
That is very well said, because it's definitely out there. It should be the name of the syndrome, to be honest with you. And it's unfortunate. And if you're not exposed, I mean, how do you expect someone to be like, if you're raised by a wolf, you're going to be a wolf, right? 9 times out of 10, right? So, no, I definitely agree. What do you do with that?
It's a really big challenge these days, because more and more young people are being raised without a father presence.
Mm-hmm.
And where are they getting that presence from, if at all?
From the TV, from hip hop, from Joe Blow on the corner.
I got it from all kinds of places, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was raised by a single mother, and there's an ideal, that you kind of hope or wonder. You see other kids and their dads, working, bringing the motorcycle trips, or whatever, the mom's boyfriend, that takes you fishing every now and then. So you learn at least some aspects of what society might consider manly, as far as survival and protecting. But at Aaron, the same time,
go ahead, Aaron. I have a question for you when you're done.
Oh yeah, well, because at the same time, I think a lot of this contextualizing of masculine and feminine is a mere construct that we create to create more separation, which we need to lessen if at all possible.
Amen to that.
So, you're absolutely right.
So definitely. So where do you feel? And I'll ask this to all of the men and also the people who are in the room here. What are some of the areas, or what are some examples of us getting that masculine femme? What can be done to sort of get rid of those boundaries?
I think we have to stop the Pied Piper syndrome, gentlemen. And I mean, we have all heard the fairy tale. You know, they get all these rats and they bring this flautist in, and he blows this. He says the tune that the rats like, and they all trail him off, and they happily go to their demise. Unfortunately, that is what happens to us too many times. Is that we buy into the Pied Piper syndrome, and we don't think for ourselves. In trying to get to know who Aaron is, instead of trying to get to know who Kente and Dr. Vibe are, then I want to impress upon them some of my silliness that I've listened to the Piper, rather than understanding that what would be the harm of my listening to what Aaron has to say? What would be the harm of my listening to what Dr. Vibe and Kente alluded to it in our earlier conversation? He said that once he accepts within himself that, hey, I was the one that was wrong, and I go back and I correct that, and I share with people, and they appreciate it. So I would just like to just revisit that, what Kente was saying, because we lend ourselves to that Pied Piper syndrome, and then we get angry with Dr. Vibe and you, Aaron, and Kente, because you won't buy into it. Mm-hmm. And then we start to not only do we ostracize you, we try to get other people to ostracize you as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to catch up here a little bit and also say welcome to JNF Enterprises on Periscope. You for Sight, there's a number of comments I'm going to just catch up on here. The things that influence our kids, our music, and celebrity parents that haven't been influenced since we started tossing phones in the backseat with our kids. I also remember hearing about tribal manhood rituals where a young man is tested in various ways to prove himself and his village and his maturity. He's saying here, I hear what you are saying, but what man will make a law to convince himself of doing wrong? We all want to see ourselves. It's always being and doing the right thing. So just to catch up on some of the comments, you for Sight, for you too on the YouTube. Just wanted to ask, so Aaron, you had mentioned you were raised by a single mother. Where did you get any teachings in regards to manhood from?
I don't know if you're gonna. A lot of it was finding, the true God within. Kind of like, I kind of recognized the whole Pied Piper thing of trying to fit in with the cool crowd and fit in with society or tribal. I actually studied it as a child, recognized that that's a human need.
Yep.
As far as, basic human need, you want to be accepted by family and society, a contributor. And realizing that the follower, I always say, you lead by following. Lead, follower, get out of the way. I've always said, no, I'll stand in the way if I see something going down to change. And really that individuality, that individual expression, that human expression is such a prime source energy that the subjugation of that and the control of that, like you're saying, with the money system for the war and for the work, to basically create this generation after generation, reaching, looking, having that void, looking for that follow. And then who comes along? Uncle Sam. Remember Uncle Sammy? He's going to bring you, Sammy. He's going to let you have that beer. He's going to be like, he's going to take you to Vietnam, suck you, fuck you, $5, bro. Is going to subjugate each and every individual, generation upon generation, and removing that element. And these are all things that I kind of dove in individually. But I mean, that's what I jumped in to say, and kind of get spinning, get some feedback, get some insight, because in reality, how my main goal is how are we going to change this? Not only, yes, let's identify, I'm sorry, society, I was part of society. I'm sorry for fucking up. I want to make it right. How do I make it right? And that's basically by leave, follow, get out of the way. Hell no. When I'm getting in the way. And, that's just how I see it, I
No,
guess.
that's more than fair. And I think that's part of manhood, that if you see something wrong, you got to stand up and call it. Whether it's your buddy, whether it's society, whether it's a younger person, that's to me part of the manhood. That if you feel something is wrong, like the old saying says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I also appreciate Melvin putting himself on mute, because that's got rid of the echo. So that is a good thing. Some other comments here. I'm just taking a look. So Steph, great comment. Some men confuse manhood with male chauvinism. And I.A. Lewis, that book, Cool Pose, that is a very good book. I have read that. So if you want to read a good book, please, and people have any recommended books on these topics, sure, share them with our audience. That is a very good book. Jen is saying women have just as much to gain from men understanding themselves and masculinity as men themselves do. Sometimes if your dad dies, as example, women need to help. That isn't always as romantic in nature. I guess I mean it is a community. Jen, that is a great comment, because one of the key points in a man's life is when his father dies.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he has a good or bad relationship with his father, that is a very key moment.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a very, very key moment. So, ladies or partners out there, if your man loses his father, please, if you can, support him, especially in that moment. Yeah, so Steph is saying my son's dad died when he was 5. Oh my gosh. Wow. And she said he cried every day for a year. Okay, so Spider's saying, why is it a key moment? Anyone else? Anyone want to chime in on that?
Well, for me, my father was my superhero, right? I learned everything from him. We had a very close relationship. And, he was probably the most important person in my life. And, he was, very well respected. And he was just, I went to him for advice for everything. So when my father passed away in 2013, it was very traumatic for me, even though, I knew, he had been sick for a while. I still haven't, gotten through that, because he just was so important to me, my mother obviously is important as well, but me and my father just had a special relationship, and even more so than with my mother, and obviously I love my mother tremendously. So it's just if you have the kind of relationship I had with my father, yeah, it's the seminal moment of my life. Nothing, I've had my brother die. I've had other people in my life pass away, but losing my father was something that, it just transformed me forever. To be honest with you, when he did die, I was so in a bad place that I didn't even know what was going to happen going forward. Just the idea of being in the world without my father, it was a tough thing.
Kinte, I really appreciate your transparency. Like, I am blessed that my father is still alive, but for many years, we did not have a great relationship, and it didn't change until my dad suffered a heart attack. And when he was going in for his surgery, I will never forget wheeling my father on the gurney into his operation room, and then waiting for 4.5 hours, wondering if I'll ever see him again.
Yeah.
Right. So I can fully relate Kinte. And of course, when he was okay. And when I went to see my father, the first thing he said is, "Oh, I can feel my toes again." I go, "You jerk. All this time you couldn't feel your toes and all this stuff." But what I'm doing with my father now, he's living history. So I am getting every ounce that I can get out of him. And he says that like for me, with my father, he says, like, when I have important decisions to make, I turn to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to think about the day my dad dies, because my world is going to be totally different. And I hope I'm blessed enough to have a support system to get me through that time, because it could be a long period of time. And like Kinte, it may take forever.
Yeah.
So that's when, like, getting back to the manhood and masculinity, if you're positive in those attributes, that will get you through those times. But, Kinte, again, thanks for your transparency.
Can I give a shout out to Larissa? I haven't talked to her in so long. How you doing, Larissa? Larissa is in the house. Larly.
Okay, Aaron Ray. Thanks, Aaron, for you had to jump in, but thanks for adding positive value to the conversation. Anyone want to jump in to the spot? No problem, Aaron. That's good. Anyone else want to jump in? What I can do is end the conversation now. We can do an after show. Any other final comments that people want to jump in before we end recording? I'm not. So what we'll do this is Melvin, Kinte, give final words, your contact information, and we'll end the recorded conversation. Melvin?
Oh, no, go ahead, Melvin.
Okay, guys. Again, it's been great being here, Dr. Vibe. It's always great with you, my brother. And Kinte, great meeting you, and I'm sure we'll see each other a lot. But my contact information, it's very easy to find me at www.dyingonmyfeet.com. You can find me there. Once you get to that website, then you will find most of my social media buttons right there. Just click on those buttons and you can find anything that about me. I'm very excited about this process. I understand that Brother Glenn does a lot of men workshops, etc. I do the same. I do parenting workshops. I'm also a writer, a poet, and just a lot of things that we do. So I look forward to working with you guys. And for our listeners that are in the room, feel free to just hit up www.dyingonmyfeet.com.
Thank you, Melvin, for jumping. Put yourself there. Good. He's put himself on mute, so no echo. Kinte, yourself?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Vibe, for hosting this conversation. It's definitely something that's very much so needed. And I want to just say that I'll put it in the chat room. If you are not following me on Twitter, please do. It's twitter.com, of course, /KinteF, KINTEF. And also, I want to say that, this is a conversation that can have multiple chapters to it because it's definitely necessary. Maybe we need to do this thing where we have a book club too, because I wasn't aware of this book that Lewis, I'm just ordering it now. I'm making sure it comes on Saturday because I leave on Sunday. So, so I'm gonna read that while I'm away. But yeah, I'm so glad to have these conversations. And anytime you need me, I'm here. And tomorrow, just as a shameless plug, I have a show at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. It's on YouTube. I'm going to be interviewing martial artist and actor. His name is Robert Parham, and he has a movie called Jackson Bolt. And that's at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern, indyradio.org, indyradio.org.
Yes, make sure you follow Kinte. He's doing outstanding stuff. Like a lot of people that are still in the conversation here, the Dr. Tachis, Patrick Ricardo, Bobby, Leah, Spida. For myself, Glenn, if it sounds that what Glenn had to share was something people wanted to hear and listen to. Mm-hmm. So as I said, Glenn will be coming back in the new year, and he'll do his series of 4 archetypes of a man. That is big time stuff, really and truly. So for myself, I'd like to say thanks for everybody who stopped by. If I went through everyone's name, I'd probably miss some, but I'm going to try my best. Of course, Kinte, Melvin, Bobby, Jada, Ricardo, Steve, Dr. Tachi. Who else? Dre, Steve,
Danny,
some other people. Danny,
Larissa, Oh, is
Patrick
that Q? Q? He's Takashi. He got his changing up his
yeah,
name like that. Okay.
Patrick, thank you so much. IA Lewis, thank you so
Quali
much. I Can Do Dave from Australia, much thanks.
Jen.
Myself, great conversation. Thank you. What I'm going to say to end off, manhood is a very important thing, and I will be continuing to host these conversations in 2019. If there's any areas or any conversations you'd like me to host, just touch base with me. I put my contact information in the comments section. Like to say, few last things. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Also, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. Upcoming conversations with myself on Saturday, I have Lady Nova Browning Rutherford. We're going to be talking about who means more to you, your immediate family or the ones outside your immediate family, especially at this time of year. Family can be a very challenging thing. Monday night, I have LaRon Barton talking about why I don't do Code Switch at 9 p.m. And then next Wednesday, one of the ladies is still here, Leah World Traveler and Dr. Tachi. They may or may not be on. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to say that. I actually have another conversation coming up next week. Can't remember, but just check it out. Like also on Monday evening, I have, an intimacy coach talking about religion and sexuality. So there's a number of conversations coming up. Can't remember them all, and we've been on for too long. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching on Periscope, on Get Vocal, and on YouTube. Remember, you're blessed and highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith. Good night, everybody, and catch you soon.